Yo, welcome back to another episode of IO Show. I had to do that quickly because I made the mistake and we're 6 minutes into the video. I made a mistake that stopped the recording. So now we have to start from damn near the middle of the video. My fault. But all we learned so far is dolphins are the smartest creature in the ocean. Anglerfish have the thing on their head because they were in the dark. Nemo and Marvin are probably gonna to have kids together. What else? Bruce the shark from Finding Nemo was apparently a girl because they didn't have his two dinglings. What else? What else we got? Apparently fish swim in harmony because they have sensors. I don't really understand it because apparently they swim together to stop the water from being super strong. And I don't understand that because why don't they just like pass each other into slipstream? Yeah. Or they don't have slipstreams in water. Orcas attack boats. Whatever. Swordfish are the fastest creature in the ocean. Some shells have harpoons in them. Starfish apparently don't have a brain, but they get hungry and can just move to find food, I guess. To the fish that can punch. If you ever watched Donadon, the thingy that had like the fast fist. Yeah, it's a real thing. And yeah, caught you up.
Also, fun fact, many octopuses have the ability to rapidly change their color to match their surroundings. At JPB Low asks, how do octopuses change their color? Their skin
Camouflage and evolution.
actually has the ability to see or perceive the color of the background that they're sitting on, and that information is somehow passed on to the chromatophores that lives underneath the skin. Each chromatophore holds one pigment. There might be a blue pigment, a red pigment, and a yellow pigment. They can rapidly change the distribution of these pigments in their skin. It allows them to rapidly change color, and they have fine-scale control over each of these pigment cells. At Mr. McKenzie SD5 asks, how do you tell a fish's age? So fishes generally have indeterminate growth. However, there is a way to tell. This is a 3D printed fish skull. There are a couple bones in the back of the skull here that are called otoliths. They're underneath the skull, but if you were to pull them out, you'd find these really nice coin-shaped bones that have these concentric growth rings around them. So fishes lay down these growth rings in their bone, much like trees do. So you can actually count the rings in fish bone, much like you would in a tree. At Exo Danny asks, fish fry at my grandma's today. Fish with bones and fish without bones. Yeah, this is how I classify my fish. This is how I classify my fish too. So it turns out you can actually classify much of vertebrate diversity into these really neat categories of fishes with bones and fishes without bones. All the vertebrates that have jaws can be broken into two distinct categories. So there are cartilaginous fish, which are sharks, stingrays, and the
So sharks don't have bones. I remember when I was in like the 8th grade, we had to cut some sharks open. They didn't have bones, huh? Not gonna lie, before I die, I need to taste what a shark and a whale tastes like. No PETA. I just need to know. With barbecue sauce and ketchup.
rare chimera. And then there are bony fishes, which include trouts, frogs, cats, dogs, and you and me. Yes, even you and me. Biologists typically classify humans and mammals in general as a group of organisms within the larger clade of bony fishes.
Yeah, that seems like copium. I ain't gonna lie.
At CPF Trainer asks, do all fish have similar numbers/types of fins? And what are these fins called? Some of the common fins you might see are these pectoral fins off on the side. Pectoral fins in general are often used in hovering behaviors. So you see these in fishes that live in coral reefs. So things like wrasses and triggerfishes will oftentimes flap their pectoral fins to hover over a structure to further investigate whatever is living in it. The fins at the top are typically called dorsal fins. The front dorsal fin is particularly interesting because they oftentimes get adapted into venomous slime,
what is that?
sometimes even fatal in the case of the stonefish. In the case of this little Nile perch, it looks like one continuous dorsal fin, but there's basically a skin connection between the front spiny dorsal fin rays and the back kind of feathery dorsal fin rays. This back fin is called the caudal fin, and it's used to generate thrust. If a fish is trying to get away, it'll beat this tail fin to help it move quickly.
I'm not sure why no one has asked yet. What's at the bottom of the ocean? How come? Why haven't we gone down there and found out that dinosaurs still exist? You know, what's the It's not the megalodon. It's the ancient sharks. I'm pretty sure those still exist at the bottom of the ocean. Bro, Atlantis has to be. If what I understand is true, we haven't seen what 90% of what's in the ocean, and the Earth is 70% of the 70% water. Yeah, Atlantis has to be real. Krakens have to exist. Um, yeah.
At Niv writes, asks, does coral count as an animal? It's so alive and so pretty. It is, in fact, an animal, and it's also
How?
alive and very pretty. They're closely related to jellyfish, but instead of floating in the ocean, they build these complex limestone skeletons, so you can see these little holes and pockmarks inside the coral skeleton.
All is it all just one thing, or is it like multiple?
And that's where the individual polyps live. So in life, this coral would be very, very colorful. However, this particular skeleton is bleached. So when corals get stressed because of higher temperatures in the ocean, they'll expel the algae that they keep inside their tissues, and they'll basically have no way to feed, and they'll starve over the course of the next several weeks. Losing
Dang.
these reefs, which can happen very, very quickly, will have catastrophic effects on tropical diversity worldwide. So ways to prevent this include reducing global temperatures, taking climate change seriously in general, and in some very isolated cases, pumping cold seawater back onto the coral.
That's not my question.
Rush asks, how does the goblin shark even eat without its nose getting in the way? Goblin sharks have these very, very elongate rostrum
Bro, that's a waste of a question. It just tilts its head up.
or noses that they use to sense other animals in the water column. In order to feed, they actually have to protrude their mouth out away from their nose to catch prey and bring it back. If you just try to bite something underwater, you'll actually push it away from you. So many animals have evolved the ability to protrude their mouths and generate suction to bring prey towards them. Another one is
Like
the
Kirby.
sunjaw wrasse. They have the ability to protrude their jaw up to a
Damn.
third of their total body length to bring in evasive prey and then retract it. At Jameson Rich asks, never forget.
And that someone is.
There's a creature on this earth that was discovered and named by the people of science the vampire squid from hell. So yes, vampire squids are real. They are a thing. They were discovered in the late 1890s in the Valdivia expedition.
Yeah, someone got drained for sure.
If you dropped a net thinking that there would be no life at the bottom of the ocean and you pulled up that vampire squid, you would name it the vampire squid from hell too. Contrary to their appearance, which can be quite terrifying,
Yo.
these animals have basically made a living out of doing nothing. They live in oxygen minimum zones in the ocean, so they very rarely ever move, and they feed primarily on leftover food that basically floats down from the surface. At Jaquel, 8277638 asks, OMG, when did whales learn to walk on land? Whales learned to walk on land about 35 million years ago. So all whales, manatees, and seals evolved from ancestors that once walked on land. These whale ancestors gradually became
That's a rat.
more aquatic, and as they got larger and as they became more adapted to aquatic
Yeah,
habitats, they
these
evolved
are
a broader
rats.
range and a wider range of dietary strategies. At Stephanie Lino,
Wait a second, what? Bro, fish can't walk on land. They used to be able to, but they don't now, idiot.
asks, there's no way seahorses are real. Seahorses are quite real.
Yeah.
Seahorses have been around for 13 million years, and in that time, they've actually evolved a broad variety of body shapes. Typically, it's
And also, the dude's the one who gets pregnant. Oh my god, bro. It's a weird concept. I'm not sure if it's like the only animal where the dude gets pregnant besides clownfish, but the dude's not a dude anymore in a clownfish case because it kind of turns into a girl. But like off dribble, it'll be a male seahorse that has the kids. Crazy.
associated with camouflage. There are things like the leafy sea dragon,
Whoa.
which looks like a piece of kelp. Seahorses are terrible swimmers, some of the worst. To get
That's a
around that, they've
Pokemon.
evolved these prehensile tails that allow them to basically wrap their tails around structures so they can stay put. The seahorse is perhaps most famous for the fact that the male seahorse gives birth. The female will transfer her eggs into the brooding pouch of the male seahorse, and then when
What?
the eggs hatch, the male seahorse will actually give birth to the little seahorse babies. At BY Brandon White asks, what is the best defense mechanism in the sea? My favorite defense
Sword.
mechanism in the sea actually happens to be electricity. You see this in torpedo
Oh.
rays and stargazers oftentimes, where if you grab them, you actually
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with stingrays for some reason. I don't know. Every time I went to the aquarium, stingrays. I had a whole stingray toy. This little thing I used to keep all the time. Yeah, Everybody else had dinosaurs. I had stingrays.
Be shocked. The way that they are able to shock you is using these modified muscle cells that have evolved to be able to generate an electric current. For some electric fishes, for instance, the electric
That's a weird concept. How did a fish learn what electricity is if it's in water? And also, how come it doesn't just shock the whole ocean? You feel me? Because water's the conductors and not why wouldn't the electricity from the thing just make it like the most overpowered creature in the ocean?
eel, the current can be as strong as 600 volts. The electric eel can drop a horse. But perhaps the weirdest defense mechanism that you'll see in the sea actually comes from hagfish slime. Hagfish slime feels weird. It feels wet, slimy, but also fibrous. So as you pull it apart, it still has some consistency to it. If a shark, for instance, will come and take a bite out of a hagfish, before the shark can even bite down, the hagfish will secrete slime and clog up the shark's mouth and gills, allowing it to make an escape. At MWSRXO asks, what do fish breathe in, water or air? Wow, how do they make bubbles down there? So fish actually breathe oxygen. They bring in the oxygen from the water and they extract.
So, oh yeah, in the original part of this video, I was talking about how Zeus and Bilu made an astute observation about how, since we breathe air, we can't see air. But since fish breathe water, can they see water? And now that he said fish breathe oxygen, I'm just gonna assume they can see water.
Extract it with their gills. These gills are really sensitive. They're often 1 or 2 cell layers thick. They have to remain really thin to allow for gas exchange. The internal structures here that you can see in the gills are called gill rakers. They'll swim through a school of plankton with their mouths open, and these rakers in the gills will trap the plankton while allowing water to pass through. One way that fishes generate bubbles is through their gas bladder. So some fish, like for instance, the dojo loach, actually has the ability to release gas out of its
that had to be a little racist.
Further down into the water. At MJ
in GTA.
It's crazy how sea creatures just know exactly where to go when they migrate.
My question is, why do they need to migrate? Does the water like change temperature or something? Because I'm pretty sure like the deeper you go into like the water, the temperature wouldn't be that crazy. So what's up with that?
Some marine animals will follow the magnetic field of the Earth. Big migrations include the migrations that we see in humpback whales as they move from the tropics, where they give birth and where they breed, to temperate and colder feeding grounds where they'll feed on plankton. Other big migrations include salmon. They grow up in fresh water, they move out to the ocean, and then they can return to the stream that they were born in to reproduce. And they accomplish this by following the Earth's magnetic field and also tracking the scent of the stream that they were born in. At the Hindu Science asks, what is the diel vertical migration and its role in carbon sequestration? The diel vertical migration is the largest migration on the planet. This occurs every night all around the world, where plankton will actually move up from the depths of the oceans. There's mixing of the carbon dioxide in the air with the water right at the surface. Plant plankton will basically extract carbon dioxide from the ocean and use this carbon to build their bodies. Larger plankton will then come and eat these plant plankton, and then fish.
So, as a plankton, do you get to make your own build? You feel me? Would they just? Can you just like make your own custom character? Can you just what would be a cool design? Could you make yourself look like a YN, have a shiesty? Or make yourself look like Naruto, have a headband, yellow hair, and just have a chocolate cloak?
Fishes and other animals will come eat the larger plankton as well, and then sink back down to the depths, taking that carbon with them. So it actually ends up being very important for the sequestration of carbon dioxide. At C4A1 asks, you ever think about what lives in the Mariana Trench and freak yourself out? Yes. The Mariana Trench is the deepest point in the ocean, 36,000 feet.
Yeah, finally, someone got to the
Mount Everest is tall. We have actually reached close to the bottom. James Cameron and about 6 other ocean explorers.
Really? What's down there, bro? You see Atlantis. You see Aquaman. What else is down there? You see Fishman Island. Come on, are there like fish people? What's up? Tell me.
And taken submersibles down into the depths of the Mariana Trench. At that depth, the ocean reaches pressures that would basically crush us instantly if we ever went down there. But many animals have evolved to actually live there. In order to do so, vertebrates have generally reduced their bony skeletons. You probably wouldn't find a megalodon at the depths of the Mariana Trench because megalodon actually evolved to live in shallow tropical waters like in the Bahamas, but you might find like some weird clams. At C22, Honcho asked, how do these bioluminescent waves work? Do people just throw glow sticks in there or what? These bioluminescent waves are widespread around the world. You can find them in places like Puerto Rico. You can also find them off the coast of the Pacific Ocean. They're produced by plankton, and whenever plankton are startled or disturbed, they'll release bioluminescence to disorient predators. So they'll have little openings in their exoskeletons that allow for light to be produced. At Neko BK asked, y'all knew jellyfish are immortal? Like them bitches don't die, ever? Turns out some jellyfish are in fact immortal. The immortal jellyfish, so aptly named, has the ability to revert.
But my real question is, how do you know? Was this like found in an aquarium where Jimmy the jellyfish just was around for 50 years and then they finally discovered it? Or how do you find out that a jellyfish is just immortal? I don't want to know how you found it out. I want to know the context of why you decide to just examine it.
Back to its juvenile stage. If it's ever injured or starving, it will then later produce a genetically identical clone of itself to further perpetuate itself. Other animals in the ocean are famously long-lived. The Greenland shark is a great example. These animals can reach 600 years. Many of our large whales can live for hundreds of years. There are still whales out there today that have the old harpoons from harpoon ships still embedded in them. Some lobsters can get pretty close to being immortal. Whenever a lobster grows, it actually has to shed its shell. They're very vulnerable during molting process because their soft parts are basically exposed, and many animals are really cued in to find crustaceans that are molting. Especially once they get older, it gets harder to escape that molting shell. So a lobster that's been alive for 150 years might finally die by at last being unable to escape that shell. The estimates for lifespan are technically indefinite because if nothing eats them, they can just keep going. At Hannah X Girl, I need to know why evolution keeps making crabs. So we don't know why things keep turning into crabs, but things that are not crabs keep turning into things that look like crabs. An example of an animal that has evolved into a crab is a hermit crab. Hermit crabs are not true crabs.
I know that before. Dweeble! Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yep.
Crabs, if you're trying to picture what a hermit crab looked like before it became a hermit crab, it most likely looked quite a bit like a shrimp or a very skinny lobster. So over the course of tens of millions of years, these hermit crab ancestors began to roll their tails up and project them at weird angles, and also enlarge their claws, and eventually came to resemble the crabs that we know today. At I Am Winter asks, fishes don't have eyelids, so do they ever sleep? The answer to that is yes.
I swear fish had eyelids. I've seen a fish blink before, so
during the sleeping process in fishes, part of the brain shuts off, but they're still able to breathe, so you can still see their gill flaps moving. They have
that's an eyelid
to stimuli, so you can swim up and basically touch a sleeping fish in many cases. In the case of whales, the patterns are very much the same. Part of their brain tells them to go up and take a breath of air, and then they'll do that, and then they'll come back down, all while sleeping. Sperm whales.
But what do fish do? Like a whale, right? Do they have like a home where they sleep? Or the kind of just like, I'm big dog, I'll sleep wherever. You can try to eat me, but at your own risk.
Whales are really famous for this because they sleep vertically in pods. You can stumble upon a pod of sleeping sperm whales that look like big, tall forests in the middle of the ocean. So those are all the questions for today. Thanks for watching.
I believe some of what he says. Some of it doesn't make sense because he said all there is at the in the deepest part of the ocean we've been able to get to, which is almost at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, was crustaceans. I don't believe that. I'm pretty sure they found Atlantis, and Aquaman told them, if you tell the people about our place, we will raid the surface. Not really, but it'd be fun if that was true. but that's gonna do it. So like, comment, subscribe, and